Hey everybody, David the AI Guide here. Welcome to another episode on the AI Guide where we're making AI human. What does that mean? We talk about the human impact of AI and all of the other associated exponential technologies like autonomy, like 3D printing, like robots. So we cover everything that is enabled by AI and exponential like AI. So thanks very much for tuning in. Click the links below, get my book on Amazon, The Beginner's Guide to AI, History of AI and Current Impact on 10 Different Industries. And the second link is free resources. I've read 3 articles in the last week that all said that people are going to have to know how to work with AI to do their job within a few years. This is soon. So click those links below, get the resources, get the book, and get ahead of the curve. So today we're going to do an update on autonomous flight. And there's a bunch of companies in this space, but one of the ones that we talked about, early on, one of the early videos all the way back in 2020, was Lilium. So Lilium is a German company, and back at that time they announced initially that they were going to have an urban air mobility airport in Orlando, and then in 2021 they said it's going to be a network covering 10 different cities in Florida, and this is going to dramatically shorten transit time from Orlando to Tampa, St. Pete, Orlando to Miami, etc. So what Lilium has been doing in the interim has been building a bunch of partnerships to facilitate doing this. So they partnered with one company, and I don't remember the name, but they partnered with one company to help build these airport facilities. And they've partnered with a couple of other companies, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. The first is Lilium has partnered with Collins Aerospace to build all the cockpit equipment for flying these. And again, initially these will be piloted aircraft, but over time, by the end of this decade, 2030, they should be autonomous. At least that's what the company believes. Of course, there's a lot to that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So that's Collins Aerospace. The next one is Lilium joins forces with GKN Aerospace for Lilium's jet electrical wiring interconnection system. So what Lilium is doing is building an aircraft manufacturing supply chain. And this is very similar to how Boeing does it. It's very similar to how Airbus does it, but they have a different company build a certain thing, like the cockpit or the electrical, etc. And Lilium is doing exactly that. So the model they're following is very well tried and proven by the big manufacturers. So that bodes well for them. But the fact that back in 2020, when they first announced it, it gave the impression that it would be here soon. So now we're in early March of 2023, and at the time it was like, well, it'll be here by 2025. Well, not really, because if they're just picking the company to build the cockpits for them, they have to build a test unit that goes in the test aircraft. And the wiring company, GKN, has to do that as well, and all the other subsystems. And then they have to put it together, and then they have to clear that with the FAA. It has to be gotten flight ready. It has to go through extensive flight testing. So this is a longer process. I'm going to say, best case, Lilium won't be ready for flight with passengers until 2027 at the earliest, maybe 2028. That's 5 years from now, might be a reasonable guess. And then autonomy will take some years after that, right? Because for 2 reasons. One is the FAA is going to insist that the Lilium aircraft has an operating history and proven safety, and then they will have to introduce autonomy gradually. So at first it'll be, taking over the controls from point to point, but not including takeoff and landing. And then they might add the takeoff, then they might add the landing, and so forth. So for Lilium, I'm going to say that it's a little bit away before they have their urban air mobility vehicle ready for passengers. 27, I'm going to say maybe 28, and then autonomy is in the between 2030 and 2035 sometime. But that said, by 2035, they should have autonomous air taxis flying around. Now, there's a whole other aspect to this that is critical, and that is these vehicles cannot be in the airspace without being cleared by the FAA into the National Airspace System. And we've talked before that NASA is helping the FAA prepare for urban air vehicles. And there was an article that just came out on the NASA website, a great website. NASA's autonomous aircraft decision tech gets simulated urban tests. So the way NASA does things is they first will build a simulated environment all in software and run it through many, many scenarios until they work out the bugs, if you will, not in the software, but in slotting aircraft into the airspace. And then the FAA will clear test flights on a limited basis and gradually ramp the thing up. So this article goes on to say, cities are complicated places to fly. Tall buildings, local microclimates, high winds, and other factors present numerous challenges, both known and unpredictable, for current and future air vehicles. But creating new air mobility solutions to move people and cargo will require addressing these challenges. So they have to work all these things out to be able to allow these urban air vehicles, UAVs, in the national airspace. NASA has a group called Data and Reasoning Fabric, and DRF designs technology to help autonomous airborne activities safely meet their full potential for society's benefit. So they're talking, this is a precursor to autonomous flight. Reducing airspace congestion to increase safety in cities while connecting people and services are the kinds of considerations driving the DRF team. So in February, March, the team is performing the first test of its technology in a simulated urban area, one modeled on Phoenix. Why Phoenix? Just like with autonomous vehicles, Phoenix is a simplified environment because you've got this massive wide open desert that's relatively flat around the airport. And so it's a very easily structured environment for autonomous air vehicles to take off and land. And with autonomous driving, they do it because Phoenix is a newer city laid out in a grid, very open, much easier to develop autonomy than Manhattan Island in New York City. So decisions needed by autonomous aircraft of the future will be web-based. So what does that mean? That means that they're going to interlace these vehicles in with the existing air traffic. That's what they mean by web, not the World Wide Web. So they started doing this with a partnership group that includes the Autonomy Association International of Mountain View, California, which includes academia, industry, government, communities, tribal nations, and 22 cities in Arizona. So they're doing this test first as a simulated test, and then they will allow, once the vehicles are complete and have been FAA certified, they will allow them to start operating on a limited basis, even autonomously, based on this system. DRF intends to accelerate airborne emergency response, and we did a separate video on that with drones. One of the very first uses of these autonomous air vehicles is going to be for emergency services. Why? eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which is what we're talking about, sorry, not UAV, but eVTOLs can literally land in the street in a neighborhood in front of a house, bring the person out and take them to the hospital. And so in that respect, it'll be competition for helicopters. Much quieter than helicopters from an article we did some months ago. So what they're preparing for is something unexpected happening in a flight path, such as a storm, the announcement of a no-fly zone, or a drop-off in communications. So autonomous vehicles need to be able to operate with no communication, because the way autonomy usually starts out for a lot of these kind of applications is people sitting there monitoring and or running the vehicle until the algorithms are perfected. Across NASA, researchers are conducting advanced air mobility studies that will transform U.S. communities, creating new ways to move people and goods in the sky. The data and AI-based decision support tools enabled by DRF will help further the AAM community's goals by providing information needed for future flight operations. So once again, AI plays a key enabling role in these next-gen technologies. So thanks so much for tuning in. Really appreciate all my viewers. You guys are the best. Especially thank you to my subscribers. Thanks so much. See you next week. Take care. Have a great rest of the week.